We're returning from recess at 8:52. All right, Clemens.
Yeah. So first of all, I would like to start out with similar statement that Catherine just did, and now that I have a chance to go through this bill, I can tell you that I definitely was there for all the finance committee meetings, and I see maybe one or two points that you brought up, but I'd say 80% of what is in here was not asked and therefore not addressed at the finance committee meetings.
Okay.
You start out with I think it's some very general, simple numbers that have been pulled together from documents that are in no correlation with each other. First one is, you say the MWSD water system serves 1,640 to 1,650 accounts, over 95% of them residential connections.
Right.
The sentence is completely wrong. We have a total of 1,975 accounts. So all the math that is following is absolutely incorrect.
Okay.
What you're not considering is fire protection accounts, for example, et cetera, et cetera. There is a lot of complications when you're simply pulling out a number of a report and making assumptions. The result can only be erroneous. The next one I want to say is a more general. Before I hand this over to maybe Peter, who's probably going to have some additions on the actual numbers, a general statement about you project the math to accounts. That is simply someone playing with numbers. It is of not very much. It's not telling us much. A much better way to analysis what the rates actually do to a community is to look at the rates per customers. If you take the number of $1.8 million and divide it by the 6,000 customers that live in this district, you come up with that every individual in this district probably pays around $300 for water.
Okay.
Now you do this for any of our neighboring districts and you get other numbers. And I can tell you that looking north and south, one of the districts is going to have significantly higher numbers. When you take the overall water sales and divide it by the number of folks they serve, you will see that our water rates, if you calculate them as per capita, are significantly lower than even our neighboring agency. So I think we should look at this point by point. I think this first point is probably the first page, where you go down into, all calculating out all these financing costs, revenue per domestic account, and I just showed you that the math does make not sense.
Okay.
Absolutely not any sense. This is something that you need to come to me, you need to ask the questions, and I can address those, at a certain time, but I think I could have addressed those beforehand and could have explained to you very easily where those errors are, and essentially showed you what the solutions are,
Okay.
and helped you to find what you're actually really looking for. So if we're looking at this first page, Peter, do you have any further comments to the first page, to anything that's on this first page? Again, the math doesn't make any sense.
I'd point out one thing, and I think it's really important because this is one of the things that sets our community apart. The property tax for water is not for water service, but for acquisition and rehabilitation of the water system. And this is something that I'm very proud to serve our community in in this because our community decided to take the system away from the gross mismanagement that had us looking at skyrocketing rate increases that would have doubles. If you look at what happened with Cal-Am down in Felton and down in Monterey, you can see what did actually happen and what was slated for us. I'm proud of our community for stepping up to this. This bond payment is what it took to get out from underneath them. This is not, I will agree, it is a burden on every home here, but this is not the cost of water service. And to lump it all together, I can see, like if, you know, I could see somebody on one of the big news channels having a talk show and trying to trump these numbers up, but it's just not right. And I can't sit here and not comment on taking this obligation that our community took on itself to free us from the horrific owners who were driving us into much higher rate territory with no improved service, no improved sources of supply, constant leaks that were up over 16% of our total water production. I mean, the whole thing was terrible. The community stepped up. That's what that number is. And it's not right to put that in here and then say, well, you know, we're paying through the nose, you know, unlike all the other neighboring districts, and that's why we should merge with them and give up our identity and our self-determination that led to, hey, you know, you had a long speech that you had prepared, and you didn't comment at all during any of the question section that we had, and then decided to come in at the last minute. You're not going to get the last word on this, because that's not how that's going to work. You want to lay in wait and drop this kind of bomb on us and fail to bring this stuff to us timely in the right manner, be prepared to sit and listen for a bit. You try to throw in the bond payment in here, and you're telling the whole community how much disregard you have for their desire for self-determination and locally controlled water. That's my read on it. That's my position on it. Know it. And I reject this inclusion of this number in this portion of your argument outright. And I give it no weight or merit.
It is specious.
You picked this fight. And I didn't ask for this. But if you're going to bring it, you're going to know that this community is represented by people who are committed to what that number stands for.
I'm trying to figure out what some of these phrases mean. You've got a total financing expense in the 2, 4, 6, 7th line, and then further down you've got financing cost per domestic account, and then you've got property tax per domestic account. I'm trying to figure out what is financing for projects like interest we pay to the loan agencies, what is the bond, and what is property tax income from each individual account. Because you're using those phrases in a confusing manner.
Could very well be. My only point in the whole thing was the fact that to put some numbers to the fact that we do pay high rates.
How did you calculate the total financing?
Oh, wait a minute,
Wait.
Clemens. I still need to know what those numbers mean and where they come from. Whipping out numbers that aren't defined is it's not transparent.
Okay, so basically the revenues were all divided by 1644, I believe it was. And to show what on the basis of 1644, I rounded off 1640, 1650, and I got that from the 2011 Water System Master Plan for December 11th. They pulled it right off of that. And that said that we have, the water system serves this many people. Okay, that the projected water sales, I believe that's in the budget. The total financing expense, I think that's in the budget.
And what
Where's-
financing is that? Is that the loan payments? What is that?
Yeah,
And where's that number in the budget?
So that's not the bond.
Now, whatever that is, it's not on top of the rates. It's not on top of the cost of operating the district. That's part of the cost of operating the district, and that is rolled up into what comes out in the rates that all of us pay.
yeah.
So it's a restatement of a number that's a component of the cost of doing business, but it's not something that makes it cost more on top of the rates that, it leaves the false impression.
Okay.
What
Okay, that's-
what I heard was, and there's this, and there's this, and there's this, when in fact, what our ratepayers see for the cost of operating the district is what they pay in rates. And that's actually a pretty easy number, and, you know, we would take the revenue, we divide it by the number of accounts, there you go, that's per account. Take it, divide it by the number of people, that's per
Yeah.
capita. I think we could find a reasonable basis of agreement there.
So that it's very possible that one of these numbers paints a picture that may be perceived in a different way. And then 285,000 is, you know, just right off of the budget. Basically, if you took the water sales and divided by the 1644, I think that's where you get the $1,123 per year, or $93 a month. I took basically the
But wait a minute, you're using residential accounts and then dividing the revenue from all accounts.
Oh.
So you're using, for instance, the high water users, which are some of our businesses like the hospital, and you're putting their bill on the residential account.
okay, but 95% of these are residential.
It doesn't matter. You didn't look
Okay.
at the distribution.
The water usage
Between
from the
the water
hospital is
uses.
substantially larger than
We have-
any
we have
individual.
one of these accounts serving a quarter of the population
Yeah. Okay.
in the district.
My point in the whole thing is that the cost that all of us pay for water is significant, okay? That because it is significant, and I think we would all agree that we have an obligation to manage the district as well as possibly can be managed, okay? So that I did not state that anybody was doing anything unethical, illegal, or anything like this. It's basically, my points are these. That number one is that you're comparing the proposed budget with the previous budget. You're comparing one theoretical figure with another theoretical figure. That, so for instance, that taking this property tax, you know,
This is absolutely not true. This is absolutely not true. We're not basing our budget on last year's budget. We're basing the current budget on the actual expenditures.
Yes.
This is,
whoa, whoa, whoa.
There is a comparison, and it is useful as a planning tool.
Wait,
Hang
wait.
on. I'm in the middle of a
Okay.
sentence. It is useful as a planning tool and as a management tool to look at year over year, but what is in the budget is based on actual expense and need, and that's actually motivated in the prelude to the budget that that Clemens has put here for us and that he went through with us. So the business about, and you even included some note about some of the things that are causing the actuals to go up, the cost of living increase, you mentioned the raise. I'm not sure what. Oh, and the increase in staffing requirement. These are things that make it go up. Those are actually the basis for the increase. But it's entirely common and useful and a reasonable business practice for us to look at last year's numbers and this year's numbers and look at that and go, we're looking for areas of inappropriate growth or inappropriate lack of funding. And we can tell these things sometimes. It is a common thing to look at the plus and then the percentage and go, does that seem reasonable? A lot of this, we could all sit down and we could look at the receipts for the past year, all the invoices, we could read through them all and be here for I don't know how many hours. Or we could look at these documents and dig into the detail where the numbers seem to matter and make our judgments. This is not an uncommon practice. In fact, I've seen it done at the City of Pacifica. I've seen it done at North Coast County Water District. I've seen it done here. I've seen it done at Granada Sanitary District. I've seen it done at the Sewer Authority. I've seen it done at CCWD, and I've seen it done at the City of Half Moon Bay, to look at year over year, looking at the pluses and minuses on the differentials between those budgets. And it is at the same time also done that people look at actual versus budgeted, and those provide good guidance for the people who have the responsibility to manage the district. And frankly, I don't think those of us who ran for this office, which would be 5 people sitting at this table, need to be told that we have a duty to manage this thing well.
I'm confused,
Oh, okay,
Bill. Wait a minute. You say combined labor and benefits is proposed to be $894,768. The difference is $75,177. This is a 9% overall increase, 5% employee, 2.5% COLA, and a modest 2.5% raise. Now you've got a comma between employee and 2.5%. Are you adding the 2.5% COLA and the modest raise to get 5%?
I believe I am.
Okay. There is also the cost of addition labor related to Pillar Ridge, and that's noted again on the last page. If you use an actual anticipated expenditure for fiscal year 2013 of $657,395, the difference is $237,333, a 36% increase. Now, are you attempting to say that our labor costs are going to be 36% higher? What do you mean by that?
Okay, that's,
Wait, before you answer that, we're talking about apples and oranges. You're talking about water and sewer in one section, and then you just talk about just water to compare it. No, but yeah, we can't, the second page, let's hold off on the second page.
Let's do this.
Let's
If we
let
could hear
Peter
from
go
our
back to the
county.
first page.
Okay.
Yes.
That's
if,
fair.
if you can, or to the table, either one, whichever works better for you.
Probably the table.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's probably more comfortable.
Let's hold off on this.
Yeah, let's see if we can get something here. Let's take the easy one.
But we'll get to that. Let's go back to this page.
That should be.
Thank you for your. Yes. Okay, the first page, I believe, has been worked out, and, you know, you said the 1.8 is our projected water sales for the month, for the year. The 1.3 is our total financing expense, which a large part of it is the GO bonds, which were, in 2003, they were approved, and the money comes through the property tax revenue every year. We cover dollar for dollar.
okay.
So that's that. The remaining portion are $150,000 for the CRF loans and another $56,000 for the PNC equipment lease. In comparison, small to the $1.1 million of the GO bonds. The second page is really, the first paragraph here is saying that we're not comparing the actuals to what we're budgeting to in future years. If you turn to page, I believe it's page 14 on the water side, we do compare, we have the 2012-2013 actuals, and then compared to that, the very next column is a 2013-2014 budget. So we're comparing side by side, you go down line by line, and we're in the major area for the revenue, we're modest growth in the expenditure category. We drop down in areas that were believed to be, that were going to be less less in the current year. And we compare. The largest items, as you guys probably know, are, as you guys always know, labor. And you actually bring that point up here, and like you guys said, it is comparing apples to oranges, because you have here the combined amount of labor, and then you're just using the water for the $67,000, and we actually do have a comparison on, it's going to be page 6 of the actuals, and actually for fiscal year 13-14, if you combine water and sewer, we're projected to be $20,000 under budget for this current fiscal year, which will. The budget that's presented to you is budgeted flat for labor. The 5% increase was proposed at finance committee meetings, but has not been approved as well. But it is shown here, the 5% increase on the overall, but still.
I think the previous board approved that increase.
It had support.
Yeah, I support it too. The 5%. But
you're comparing the $657,000 13-14 budget to the.
No, I'm comparing the actual expenditure.
The actual expenditure, we don't quite know. We can only project out for a March projection, which, like I said, is projected to be $20,000 under budget.
Wait, let's go back to page 2 again. So Bill, do you understand that, go to page 5 of the budget that presented, page 5, fiscal year 2014 budget impact areas labor. So you've got, on the bottom you have $657,000, which was water. And then in the top of the page you have the combined labor and benefits for water and sewer, 819. You know, am I wrong, or these numbers are apples and oranges? You're completely erroneous on this page.
Oh, okay.
Did you look at that more carefully?
Can I make a suggestion here? I'm really kind of upset this came up tonight. I think the timing of this is poor, so I'll just be right honest about that.
For those of us that work at night.
Yeah, so that's one part. Two, to me, the biggest challenge of the budget is not what's presented, because I think the presentation of the budget, the due diligence on it was done at the finance committee, and we had a large, long discussion about this at the last meeting, if I recall, and I thought we were more or less at consensus of the document. My fear about tonight is we're going to, first of all, it generated some feelings. Scott and I talked a little bit about that just before the break, which I don't think is healthy for this group. And then secondly, I think our biggest challenges are twofold. We have a functional water deficit that we're going to have to address, and we're going to have to do it as a group with the rate study. And I would hate for us to deviate into, which has gone into a very painful, long, and I'm not sure solve anything kind of discussion, when we really need to focus on that. I think the second part from tonight, from my perspective, is, and getting back to Clement's response, I do think some due diligence needs to be done offline. So some of these issues that are being brought up, I know you and I Clemens meet every month and to try to do some of these due diligence issues prior to the board meeting, and I recommend all of us do that. More importantly, when we have our master plan work study, I would hope that part of our discussion is going to be on how do we vet these questions in such a way that we can, I think having disagreements and differences of opinion is fine, but I also want to make sure we're doing it in a way that promotes each other's ability to communicate with each other, and I'm a little nervous about the outcome of tonight's discussion on that. So I would like us to think about how much more time we want to spend on the point by point, and maybe recommend this be taken offline, 1. 2, we have a motion to vote on the budget. I would suggest we move fairly quickly on that. And 3, focus on how we can move forward in this issue, maybe at a later date, perhaps at a work session on that.
We have a motion, but there was no second.
I will second it.
Okay, I made the motion.
I thought it had been seconded, but if it hasn't, I will.
Since I asked for it and I didn't write it down on the agenda, where I'm keeping my notes.
We were having a discussion about splitting it up, and I think
I'm gonna give it to Jim and to Dwight as the motion made and seconded.
Well, I got halfway through the motion.
That's what happened. Well, all right. So
Well, I respect your opinion, and if this had been brought up in a different venue, instead of waiting until the vote on the budget. But now it's on tape, it's going to be presented to the public, and I think the public it's our obligation to tell the public exactly what is going on and what is being misstated in this paper.
But I would recommend, again, the public can understand it over time. I don't think it has to be solved tonight.
Well, I'd like to get through it as quickly as possible, but there's something that I definitely want to say, and let me see if I can capture some of it.
Well,
too.
and yeah, because the word transparency was brought up, and as a board member, I feel transparency is of critical importance.
For the members of the audience at home, I'm going to give you a little visual display. The work of the committee with the general manager and our accountant generated a document which is before us right now, which is available on the website that you can read, that is perhaps one of the most detailed budgets I have seen in my 16 years on this board. I find this, the only problem I have with this is that there's so much detail, but I'm not going to complain because that's what transparency is made of, and sometimes it takes homework for the transparency to mean anything. The statements that I want to kind of roll up into one thing. There's a kind of undercurrent to some of the stuff about the lack of transparency, and talks about distorting the general manager's performance. And this is something that I will not leave this meeting without commenting on. This is where it was a comment too far, and this appears to be a continuation of a vendetta from a previous board member, and it pains me to talk about this because it's someone who brought me into this public service and mentored me for a while, and I just can't stand what I'm seeing with this carrying on at this vendetta that got started when there was pushback on one director insisting, against the will of the other directors, insisting that the general manager kowtow and completely change a whole bunch of reporting stuff so he could make the comparison to make the case that we should be merged away into other districts. And it wound up with a lot of anger on his part directed at the general manager, and I want to see that come to an end. What Clemens has done here for us is remarkable work. He has been a very good manager working with the board and has established a very good working relationship with most members of the board. What we saw in the prior experience was far and away an unusual and inexplicable exception, but not on the part of Clemens' behavior. I thought Clemens stood up to that onslaught with grace and dignity. From time to time, like I did tonight, getting a little flustered, but sometimes it's really shocking what comes out, and we have to try to contend with it and keep our composure and get on through it. You want to talk about the practicalities, the numbers, and the particulars of where we could be more transparent in what we do? I'm with you all the way down the line. I'll be happy to stand shoulder to shoulder with you and work on that.
Okay.
Throw in the broadsides. In a continuation of that vendetta, you will find me right in your face.
Well, first,
And I don't like to work that way. And people who've been watching me do this for 16 years are going to be looking at this tonight and going, whoa, this is different. Well, it is. But I have had my fill of this. The good people of our district and the good people who have been dedicating themselves to the work of this agency deserve better than that. It's not about what you're trying to make it about, in my understanding. My understanding could be wrong, but what I'm telling you is I'm hearing it and I don't like it. And if we're going to do as Dwight's suggesting and be able to work shoulder to shoulder on addressing things like some deficits, we're going to have to make sure that this isn't part of the mix.
okay. First of all, I do not have a vendetta against anyone. That I have a difference of opinion on the way that certain numbers in the budget were arrived at, okay? I have stated those before. I have not stated them loudly or strongly, but I have stated them. And I will give you this example.
Catherine's next.
In the budget, and I have to find it here. We have
Bill,
property tax receipts, okay? It shows that it was budgeted for last year of $225,000, and it's projected that we're going to collect $285,000, okay? That the proposed budget is $225,000. And my only point is that I feel that the $285,000 is a more accurate figure, and so therefore, it's my feeling that that figure should be used for the proposed budget, not 225.
you know, that kind of thing could easily have, that kind of concern, whether it's coming from the right place and well-informed or not, that wouldn't even matter in the function of the committee. That would have been a perfect place to raise that. That would have also, it would have also been a perfect time at our last meeting to mention, I'm not sure that that's right when I look at what I think I'm seeing, and we could have discussed it as a technical issue in what was being presented. It also could have come up tonight in the discussion to say, I'm looking at this number and I'm looking at that number, and I'm not sure that I agree that what we're showing is the right number, and then we could discuss it. And it would be it would have been a completely uneventful kind of thing.
Clemens,
So
that
what I
was
want to
the,
say is that Bill is absolutely right. He has raised this point several times
Yeah.
during the finance committee
yes, he
meetings.
did.
What he did not say is that every time he raised that point, it was explained in detail to him, and the answer is very simple. This line item is composed of property taxes and ERAF refund. ERAF refund is something that is unpredictable.
Yeah.
We're looking at property tax receipts in this line item, and we're not budgeting an additional ERAF refund. We've received an extremely high ERAF refund this current fiscal year. That's why the number is so high. So I have to say, I'm frustrated that I've been explaining this to you
As have I and Peter.
several times. And Peter's been there and has done the same thing, and apparently it didn't click, but it's a very easy explanation.
Okay, well, let's go to Catherine and then to Jim.
Thank you. Yeah, the combined labor and benefits, that a good Midwestern phrase that my husband uses is a soup sandwich. It is neither one nor the other, and it is a mess. One of the things you don't appear to have noticed is that when you add a employee wages, your comp costs go up, a lot of other costs go up. But this whole paragraph, starting with, for example, and ending with 36% increase, is so misleading and it's so wrong. There's not even any point in responding to it. When you're talking about the costs, you've lived in this district long enough. I know how long you've lived here. It's been decades. You might have missed the fact that prior to us taking over this water district, our water rates were going up with the promises of system fixes that were made with duct tape, baling wire, and not much else. The tank we took down that was built in the early 40s has been replaced by 2 tanks. That does cost money. And yes, it did cost money to take over the system, but we were looking at 17% a year rate increases for no fixes to the system. We can now sell water permits. We couldn't do that for 2 decades. There were no water connections to be had. So this is.
Catherine, you don't get any argument from me on that. But I remember that very well, exactly as you said it. You said it very accurately, that those attorneys from Citizens would come in at Fairlawn View, and they would basically promise that they would do something. The PUC believed them, and they never did it. Okay.
And we have
And they got
we
the-
have never said we have low rates. We've never made that. We never made that promise when we were campaigning for the bond.
So
Our rates have been, however, going up at a significantly lower increase than any of the surrounding districts, and quite frankly, even more so than what would have been if we hadn't fixed the system as a community. I think this is, and your comments about a lack of transparency, I think I would offer this. I would be happy to sit down with you, even more, and Peter and Clemens, so we can get this so that you can understand what's going on. Because clearly there's some basic misunderstandings. And frankly, your comment on off limits to financial review, legal and engineering being two examples, that's something I review a lot. We don't need to get competitive bids. When I look at projects for other districts, for Sam, and we've explained this to you before, that in this particular case, I was just at the CSDA conference in Sacramento, and I was recommending SRT to other agencies. When I told them that SRT has, on several occasions, reduced the size and scope of projects as being able to meet our needs entirely, but save us millions of dollars, you know what they all said? We've never heard of that before. Now that's a pretty high recommendation, and you get that through a process of working with somebody who knows the system. So you can't just ask somebody to come in to replace a legal firm. Requires hundreds of thousands of dollars of training for them. They've got to come in and learn our system and all the quirks. This is not a simple one. I am sorry, but that we didn't have enough budget meetings. We will remedy this. We will have as many as it takes to help you fully understand what's really going on here.
Now,
It's Jim's turn.
right, so you know, you do have numbers that are correct here. They're just added. They're not combined and added. Again, apples and oranges. Page 2, the 36% is completely wrong. These are wrong numbers. SRT has over the years has cut back our proposals, as Catherine mentioned. They have saved us millions of dollars. Whether it's an example of saving us, whether the Corollo was going to ask for a $4 million project, SRT was able to get it down to under $1 million, which saved us a huge expense. In the last meeting, they just our water engineer cut back our proposal for the size of the tank. The sewer engineer has cut back our projects and has put out bids that has saved us a huge amount of money on the bids. You know something? So Bill, these numbers are wrong. These numbers are incorrect. So you know something? The board members. I know Scott and I and Catherine, and I know that Dwight. You know, I have to get up at 5:30 in the morning, go to work. You know, this is unprecedented to have presented this with these incorrect, false numbers just before the vote, as I was in the middle of making my motion. So this is unprecedented. So Dwight, I appreciate your comments that we want to keep working together and be collegial, but we have to respond to this. The public has to know that these are false. These are false numbers, and to cast aspersions on our staff and general managers incorrect. Let me finish, which you have done. So you know something, we want. Well, maybe we should go through these numbers in more detail later, but it's a waste of time because the numbers are incorrect, and they're not, they're numbers that are pulled off here and there and added together wrong, and they're incorrect numbers, incorrect data. So I don't think it would be, Bill, you can talk to this with Clemens on your own time, and get corrections and be corrected. But I don't think we need to spend any more time on this. The budget was the budget. Peter and Clemens and the staff did a great job. I think we need to move on, and we have a lot more agenda to do. And I don't know about you, but I don't have I can't stay up till 12 or 1 o'clock on these issues. I think we need to move along, and you need to bring your fictitious data up to where it's sourced, back to its source, and then you can talk to Clemens and get corrections. But we don't need to do this here. So I suggest we move on.
I'd like to like one short statement further, and that is, I feel a little bit like I reacted a bit too strong to this as general manager, maybe overstepped my boundaries, and like to explain, Bill, that this comes simply from the fact that before we presented the budget to the full board, I've asked at the finance committee meetings for the finance committee meetings, for the finance committee support, asked you if you can support this budget as such, and you clearly stated yes.
That was on Monday.
At least the first time around, I asked that very question very precisely, if the finance committee, if you committee members can support this budget as it is presented here, and the answer was a clear yes. And that is why I probably overreacted, and apologize for that. So I'm going to review this with Catherine and Peter, with you together, and point out the many other misstatements and errors in this.
My expectation for committee membership is to put these things on the table in the committee and hash them out. And if that's not happening, I'm perfectly open to reconsidering committee membership. I'm going to insist, as long as I'm president, that committee members put it on the table. If that can't happen, then we're going to have to do something different. You see the strong emotions that your statement has kicked up, and we're all grown-ups and we're all responsible for how we respond to this. I think I've been fairly clear about the kinds of things that motivate me to take the stern words here and put them out there. I found myself reacting very emotionally as well, and I hope we can all agree to have our responses and still behave as adults. But I hope you see, and to Dwight's excellent comments, this isn't a productive course. I think we're all happy to talk about any particulars, and we're not happy to hear things that amount to what, regardless of, perhaps you didn't mean it this way, but these came across as impugning some of the folks here. That's not going to be a constructive course. If there's facts to deal with, let's deal with the facts. But I would caution against this kind of thing, because I don't see that it's a very productive way for us to use our time or our energy, and certainly it's not very team building. And I think we have worked very hard over the years to try to, no matter who's at the table, try to work out, having an excellent team. Everybody here has something to contribute. There's no question about that. But we do value, and I think the community values, that we be able to work together. And this really feels like it. You saved it up and dropped it on us at the last minute. And as the guy presiding over the meeting, who asked, does any board member have any more questions or comments, and having heard none, asked for the motion, and then in the middle of the motion being offered to then interject, even that is a procedural thing that I'm going to ask for. Look, when I ask, does anybody have anything, that would be the time to speak.
And I thought I did.
No, I was halfway through the motion.
No, I had asked the question not once but twice, and there was silence, and that's when I asked for a motion. Look, we're all entitled to have last minute thoughts. This wasn't a last minute thought.
No, it wasn't.
So, you know, I would even say, if I told you on Monday that yes, I can support it, and I lost sleep over it, and I came tonight, I would feel obligated to say, look, I lost sleep over it, and I'm not as comfortable with it as I was on Monday. I can totally respect that. But I would like to think that we're all trying to work together, and if we're having a change of heart, and I've told the manager something, and I'm having the change of heart coming into the meeting, I'm going to try to give him a heads up. Hey, you know, I had some second thoughts, and I hate to do this to you. There are ways for us to get this done, where you can share all of these concerns, where it doesn't have to stir up a kerfuffle. And tonight we've experienced one, and I hope we can find a way to work together a little more smoothly going forward.
So the question is, should we pass the budget tonight?
We have a motion and we have a second, and if there's no further discussion,
Let's do a roll call vote.
Director Slater Carter,
Aye.
Director Harvey,
Aye.
Director Boyd,
aye.
Director Wilson,
Aye.
Director Huber.
No.
Okay, we haven't passed the Sam,
So the motion carries 4-0 with Director Huber
no,
voting
he
no.
said nay. It was 4-1.
4-1.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
The earlier vote was 4-0. 4-1 with Director Huber voting no. And this was on, no, we were going to break this into two motions, correct? One
Yes,
for
we
each
were.
resolution. Can we have a motion on the second resolution, please?
I think the motion was the salary increase of 2.5% with the language
Right.
presented by the manager, so moved.
Okay,
And I'll second it.
okay. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Now, Dwight, we had gone through old business one. I'd like to take us back there. We had gotten down to the point of considering a vote. But with you not present, we wanted to make sure you were.
That's on the entire consent agenda?
Consent agenda passed 4-0.
Oh, okay.
So back to old business one, review and possible action concerning sewer authority mid-coast side budget.
And we made I made a presentation to the board. You and I had a chance to talk about it today.
I don't need
Okay.
a presentation again, and I'm comfortable with the budget, within the contents of our discussion this morning. So for the motion
So
purposes,
the-
I'm happy to support it.
Okay.
Then
so-
let me restate the recommendation, staff recommendations to adopt two separate resolutions. One is the resolution of the Montara Water and Sanitary District approving and adopting sewer authority mid-coast side budget version V 2.0 for collection contract services for the fiscal year 14-15. And the other resolution is to adopt, consenting to approval by sewer authority mid-coast side of its general budget version 2.0 and its capitalized maintenance budget version 1.0 for the fiscal year 14-15.
Okay. Is anyone prepared to make a motion?
So moved.
So you're moving on the first one, adopting the resolution?
Yes.
The first
Next in
resolution.
order.
May we have a second, please?
I second. I just have one comment. In the future, if we could put these, and I didn't say it to you this morning, but as I read this, I have no idea what the heck it means. I'm wondering if we could perhaps put a little more English and a little less lingo on these motions in the future. I don't have any trouble with the concept, but it's written in language that is hard to understand. So if we could perhaps work on that for future motions, I'd appreciate it.
One thing I would think would help, just a simple layout thing. If we're asking for two motions, if we break it into two bulleted items or numbered items, just where you have and, just start a new paragraph, put a number 2, and
Okay.
I think that would help. I don't know what the deal is with the all caps. That's been done that way forever, but it's been done that way forever at every board meeting I've ever been to. We've got shift keys on our keyboards. I would be perfectly content if we used intercaps on these. if there's a legal reason to do it. To me, in the
I-
internet age, it just looks like shouting, and it makes it hard to read.
I think it does separate for a quick glance the difference between the resolution and the commentary at the top.
I don't see the problem.
We could do that by indenting the actual.
You could do
Text,
that
the-
with formatting.
We can play with that. That's a good comment. You're going to bring us into the internet age.
Yeah.
Okay.
But anyway, the motion itself is fine.
Okay. Any further discussion on the motion? This is a resolution. Could we have a roll call vote, please?
Dr. Slater Carter,
Aye.
Dr. Harvey.
Aye.
Dr. Boyd.
Aye.
Dr. Wilson.
Aye.
Dr. Huber.
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0. Thank you. May we have a motion and a second on the second resolution?
So moved. Next in order.
Can we have a second?
I'm a SAM representative, I'd
I'll
rather
second
someone else
it.
do it.
Let's get this going.
Oh, so was that a second?
That's the second.
Okay.
Thank you.
I don't want
Uh,
to spend time on the second one.
All right. Any further discussion? Again, roll call vote, please.
Dr. Slater Carter,
Aye.
Dr. Harvey.
Aye.
Dr. Boyd.
Aye.
Dr. Wilson.
Aye.
Dr. Huber.
Aye.
Thank you. And I'm glad you could participate with us on that. And I'd like to thank Director Huber for suggesting that we hold that vote for you. All right, on to new business item 1, review and possible action concerning San Mateo County Grand Jury Report investigating the transparency of independent special districts websites.
So the San Mateo County Grand Jury filed a report investigating the transparency of independent special districts websites on May 19, 2014. The grand jury considered parameters set by the California Special Districts Association. They have a District of Distinction certification program and make certain recommendations on what should be on a special district website, and have additionally then a list of optional things that they recommend be on a web page. Well, the result was that I think none of the special districts in the county complied with the standard that now the grand jury applied to this. So the district is required to comment by August 18, indicating if the agency agrees or disagrees with the findings and indicating if any action will be taken. I want to point out that I mean, there are, I think there's one point missing on the CSDA Association recommendation that we haven't listed. But in essence, I mean, we're 99% there already. Plus, we're currently in the process of redesigning the district webpage, and the very first thing that our consultant saw was, of course, this list from CSDA. Actually, I believe he's probably one who worked with CSDA to create this list in the first place. So the webpage is on its way to fulfill the requirements. We just have to plug now the information in. So the first step will be to create all the space holders, and that's essentially done. And now we have to get the information and pictures of the board members and all those things that we might choose to.
That's actually,
that wasn't optional.
it's optional, and I would, well, I'd want to discuss that one because there are things about what the agency can spend money on, and that might not be one of them.
You don't think your picture's worth the investment of the water district?
The amount of photoshopping that would be required could really run up the cost.
They do
No,
have-
I'm
they
actually a
do
little
have
concerned
them-
about that because we've been very careful with the newsletter to not do anything which might be construed as in any way promoting the candidacy of any of the board members. We've been very diminutive with that. Now, in our community, it's probably a good thing that people can recognize us, but it's one I'd like to discuss and make sure that we make sure at the
Yes.
minimum it's a de minimis cost for doing that. But
I do know on a number of districts they do have photos.
I know they do.
I don't know whether they are taken as selfies or what.
Well, I can tell you what the school district does. They ask you for a photo, and then it's shipped over usually by the internet, and the cost is zero.
well, it's more, well, but we pay
What are you
for,
talking about?
we're not doing it
Photos.
yet.
of
But
us on our
soon we'll be
website.
paying for the cost of the website itself and its production, and that's a cost, and it's not zero. We're actually having to budget for it this coming year because now instead of gratis, the district's going to take on the cost. So our attorney has something for us on this.
Yeah, no, I think that rule applies to printed materials, but definitely something we can look at.
I think it's something that, at minimum, we should be very conscious of in how we do it and make, be as circumspect as we can. I don't think we're, in our community, it's a good thing that people can recognize us and pin us down at the post office and press us with the question. And so I think it has a real value, but that's just one that kind of caught my eye because,
So you're talking about the attorney looking into that, whether that's a good idea to have pictures.
I think that's our idea. I think what he's saying is perfectly fine. It's up
Okay.
to us. That's
Right.
really
Okay,
what I
okay.
don't think we need to spend the money on that opinion.
Okay, good.
so I was just looking over the list of things that they are saying are required. We have almost all of that on the existing. The election procedure and deadlines,
Yes,
that's an odd one. I think I would put a link to the county election website, and because
right.
that's changing depending on what
That's right.
the registrar does. And then the authorizing statute, that's an interesting one. That would definitely be good to put up there. We have references to it, but we don't have it called out anywhere specific. And then the board member compensation,
I think that it's pretty much on the front page mentioned, so I consider
it's mentioned, but we don't mention it by statute, and we could have a link to the LegInfo page. I mean, there's things that we could do to make it easier to find. And then the list of compensation, we don't have that, although you can find it in the warrants and the budget. But I think just a list or a statement of, so much per meeting, and then
Yeah, but by
that
the
kind
way,
of thing, we could certainly do
It's
that.
by the way,
information
the board has had a raise in 16 years,
More than that.
compensation.
Lou, how long has it been $75?
Do you remember
Well, when I got on it was 50, and then it went up to
80,
70.
I think it was in the 80s, 84.
Yeah, that's what
Pulled
we
the
haven't-
resolution out around 84ish, mid 80s.
And the reason for the compensation is for someone like me, for example, I have to leave work early to get to meetings. I have time that I have to spend coming back and forth, leaving early. $75 a meeting has the way it's been for 20 years. Other districts have higher compensation. Ours is the lowest, and so just want to make sure that's clear.
I may be taking the place of Bob Patasek on this, but I'll just be the curmudgeon on this. I mean, I agree it's low, and I kind of take it as a point of pride and make a nice joke out of it when I tell people, yeah, I'm definitely in it for the money, because $75 a meeting, it plays well. People can tell, look, we must be in this for, this must be a labor of love, because it's not about the money.
It's only once a month or twice a month. This is an ad hoc meeting. It's not a.
But that's something where, look, we can put that up there. That's
This
easy.
sounds
So
like the fire
these
board.
other four, four of the others.
Did Ginny talk to you?
This is not a bad list, and I'm glad to see that we've got a big chunk of this there already, and we have, in some ways, more than some of what's here. But I like the list.
I think the only suggestion I make on this, I'm not sure why we have to pay for the certification and all that. That's, I thought was somewhat, first of all, it's not that complicated, and secondly, if you follow the guidelines, I think you could do it without having to pay for the.
Does the certification bias anything?
I would ask
the
staff to have a
CSDA
checklist and then
certification?
Yeah.
check it off.
Exactly.
Basically comply
Actually,
with
just
what they
make it
say,
a
but not seek the
requirement for
certification
the-
that they want.
Well,
website.
if you're looking to be transparent, that's what that is about. It's some districts.
You know what I would do? I would put
I think
the,
North Coast County is the first district in San Mateo County to receive a district transparency certification.
Okay.
So it's a point of pride on the part of district members and
do you know
following up
what
with
that
their
cost them?
education. I don't know. It's a matter, I can get you the
It
information.
tells
I
you
have it.
here, I can tell you, it tells you here, it would cost the district several $100s. There are fees for several of these, plus the time. Captain, my only point is that transparency is based on people using it and feeling transparent. I don't think a certificate in and of itself does much.
You notice I
what-
haven't been pushing it here.
Yeah.
What I would suggest is that we put this checklist on the website and have a link for each of these bullet items to where you can find that information on the website. So we just have the
Yeah.
transparency section,
Yeah.
the list of the things that are suggested in this report, and just to have a link. And if there's a link to everything, it's 100%.
But Scott,
Thank you
who's
for
gonna
the
do that work?
suggestion.
I think it'd be an easy way for us to hit
I would like
compliance.
to make a point here, and I've made this point repeatedly to all board members. One of the items to get the actual certification for the transparency is also board training, so that every board
That's
member goes to the training. I went through the training. I think Catherine, you went through the training.
I went through.
Let me
And
mail you
I
my
have
certificate right now.
recommended to all of you to go to a CSDA conference to participate, and I'm gonna repeat that recommendation.
There's a specific training that they have in Northern California, and it's very worthwhile, actually.
Are you talking about the ethics training, or are you talking
No,
about?
no,
the
there's,
transparency
Actually, that's part of it. You're gonna get your ethics updated at that workshop as well. But I think it's very beneficial even for board members like yourself that have been doing this for a very long time.
unfortunately, it's during weekdays and it's work time, and so that, for some of you, becomes a bigger problem than for others of
But
us.
you get a free lunch.
And a dinner,
Yeah.
some appetizers for
Yeah,
dinner.
yeah.
So if you're quick, you can get a free dinner.
Let me just remind everybody, since we're on the topic, and since I'm staring at the certificate of online proof of participation in the ethics education that I forgot to mail to you last month, I'm mailing that to you right now, and others, just a reminder, it's free, it's online, it's at the
Secretary of State.
Secretary of State's
SOS.
website, and it takes some substantial time.
They say you need to set aside 2 hours, and they actually time you, and if you do it in less than 2 hours, they get upset.
Well, what they do, you have other options to go to the next level, so I've done that too. In fact, these guys lost one, they were almost making me do it twice.
Last time I did it, I did the extended, which was interesting, and then and that took a lot more time.
Yeah.
And
All
this
I-
time I did 2 hours and 14 minutes. I have a certificate that says so, and I'm sending that to you, so you have that.
All I can say is I find it absolutely the height of hypocrisy, having been looking at campaign finance for state senate and state assembly people and some of the bills they've been taking positions on,
Yeah.
that they don't have to take anything to do with ethics.
Yeah,
They get the occasional training
yeah.
outside of
our
Only
class
3 of
sometimes.
them.
All right, so on this, Clemens, are you asking for anything from us on this?
We will prepare an answer that essentially reflects what's in the last paragraph, and if you want to look through this, I can bring it up at the next board meeting, but
Let
what I'm
me work
suggesting is
with you on
essentially
that.
saying that we're in the process of redesigning the webpage, and we'll have, and we'll be in compliance with the CSDA recommendations.
If you could, I would appreciate it, if you would mention that our long-standing website has had the preponderance of the required information and
Exactly.
additional information as well for a number of years, and our redesign is to take it to the next level.
And we
Because this is
wanna-
not something new in response to their thing, this is something where we're the first agency on the coast side to have a website.
Exactly.
And it may not be the prettiest, but there's always been a ton of information there.
And the previous website operator did a good job all those years.
And is appreciated.
It was appreciated.
All right. Reports, Sewer Authority Mid-Coast side.
Yes, we had an exciting meeting, and there are a couple of things I wanted just to continue on. Scott mentioned the flows. We had a meeting on May 19th, and there were at the monthly flow report, which you have a copy of for Sam, was challenged by one of the districts as going back to being incorrect, and that's GSD. They had a higher percentage, again, And this is after 2 years, 2 and 3 years ago, the previous general manager had done special calibrations on all the flow meters, and we thought we had it straightened out, but looks like the numbers are becoming skewed again according to that the GSD. So there's a lot of discussion about whether we should just have a simple percentage. We decided not to do that because that would be unethical. We need to have flow measurements for rates. You can't just assign a percentage for each district. So what Scott can add to this, but what was concluded was that we gave direction to our new general manager, Rob Hopkins, to look at the feasibility and the cost of having complete flow metrics for GSD, including Frenchman's Creek. So he's going to look into that and see how much that costs and how complicated that would be, and report back to the SAM board. So that took a lot of discussion, and then there was an update on the code of conduct. The committee came back with a new code of conduct, which we're going to be looking at and coming back as the next agenda item of the next meeting. The recycled water committee has been meeting, and Scott can report on the progress for the recycled water committee in just a minute. And then there was a discussion about the wet weather project, grass covering and Burnham Strip, and how the seeds didn't take, and we had a big discussion about that. Where the new general manager Sam is discussing with Stolowski, Gonzalez, and telling them that there'll be some other options, and that we're going we wanted. I made a motion to have that paid, but the board decided to further look into that, but keep the general contractor up to date into what we're doing, so that things work along smoothly. So that'll be taken care of.
Yeah, we're looking. I mean, it's the completion
Go ahead,
payment.
Scott.
It's a small amount, really, but but the contractor wants it. That situation there, it really. There was something there that didn't work out well, and it hasn't reseeded. It hasn't sprouted a whole lot of growth. We didn't have a lot of rain, which would have helped.
I was going to say, there hasn't been a whole lot of sprouting.
But there's no question that the soil does not look like the topsoil that was there. It's not the best soil around, but it wasn't that bad. So my supposition is that they scraped a little too deep, and when they set it aside, and they didn't keep it properly isolated, and
that's probably
there's some discussion, but honestly, there's not much good way to know at this point. Jim did point out the possibility that there might be some topsoil available that might just be taken from up here to down there, and well, we're going to be doing some digging soon, and we're going to have soil disposal to deal with.
There's going to be a lot of weeds in that.
The Burnham Strip
That's good.
The Burnham Strip has been examined by plant specialists, people you're familiar with.
We need weeds.
And hold in high regard, and it turns out that most of that's invasive down there, and
Yes, it is.
for it to be anything else, someone would have to regularly weed it,
And water.
like weed it and water it.
Well,
Every
actually-
week,
actually,
and so unless and until there are volunteers to do that work, more weeds there is going to be better than having topsoil where the fines blow away in the wind, leaving only the clay material, which is not a great thing. So anyway, there's some interesting discussion about ways that we might deal with that, and might get some of the grade of that property back to where it should be anyway, because that was also not a totally optimal outcome. You see that there's kind of a little hump where it really should have been worked into the slope of the soil. But all that said, I think we're actually at a pretty decent place with that. The recycling committee, now we haven't reported back to the board as a whole.
That's right.
So I'll report that we had a good meeting. We have already scheduled our next meeting, and we're looking at the possibility that it might well be time to stir things back up again. Looking at funding, potential clients, current technologies, and nothing concrete to support, or pardon me, to report yet, but we do have a lot of interest from all three member agencies, and I don't know, we'll see. We've had to be in kind of hiatus ever since the financial crisis hit, back 2008, 2009, but the economy has rebounded enough, and the need for water for certain possible clients has only increased as we knew it would. So one of my biggest concerns was that we might not still have those clients by the time financing got a little better. But I think we haven't missed that window, and so I'm looking forward to where we're going to be able to deal with that. So I'm going to kind of give you a bit of a kind of an upbeat report on that.
Okay.
All right, Midcoast Community Council.
I haven't attended any meetings for a while, I have to be honest. I've
Okay.
been going to the fire board meetings.
CSDA.
CSDA, well, CSDA has received this report, and I will be making some calls to get a committee who wants to respond to it, or at least give us all the letters that are sent in by the member agencies. I spent 2 or 3 days at the Sacramento at the Ledge Days conference with other CSDA members. There were some very interesting talks about the budget, and there was a feeling of optimism about the budget, but I just read a report that said that for the state of California, its largest chunk of income is from the personal income tax, and that is down for the first quarter of this year. And so I'm not sure how much of that optimism will remain for the state. There were some very interesting districts, and we went around. An attorney from BB&K, Best and Krieger, was my partner, and we visited Assemblyman Mullins' office, and Assemblyman Gordon's office, and Senator Hill, and another assemblyman from South Bay. And essentially our message was about the bills that are in process right now, and whether they should support them or not. And I should have brought that list with me. There were just a very few, but mostly it was to meet and greet with our local representatives and just let them know. It was a real pleasure to be able to personally tell Assemblyman Gordon that we are now issuing water permits. And he was very, very warm and friendly after I gave him that news.
Good.
I don't think he'd gotten that news before. I've told his staff, but I'm not sure it quite sunk in. So it's an event that's held every year, and it's worth going to. There were about 120 districts represented either by staff or board members this year. It was a good turnout. The next meeting, overall, there are going to be classes. Oh, the other is that the website for CSDA has been changed, so you have your own password and your own user ID. It used to be it was a user ID and password for the district, and we, everybody in the district used that same way of getting into the site. Now it is set up so you create your own user ID and your own password. And it's a very useful site. and it does have classes and phone conferences. I think Clemens is going up to a general manager's class
Right, on the 22nd.
later in the month.
This month, yes.
And there is a general CSDA conference in Palm Springs at the end of September and the first couple days of October. And I will, because I'm president and also because this district hasn't been represented there in a few years, I will drive down there so that we can be represented with our good news.
Good.
There was a lot of discussion about Hetch Hetchy water rates and the drought. And none of it was cheerful nor good news, although apparently we may be having a massive El Nino next year. Maybe about the time we get our water recycling project.
All the more reason to get more topsoil onto that property down
Yes.
there, so.
Yes.
Probably neither one of them, you're gonna, this is gonna go on for a while.
All right, next on our list, CCWD committee.
Nothing to report.
Nothing to report.
Okay, attorney's report.
No report?
Okay, wise move. Director's reports.
Did Dave prompt you on that?
Anything from directors? I'll pitch in. We are below normal on water. We appreciate the conservation that everybody's been doing. Please keep it up. It's helping. And our district is already probably the lowest per capita consumption district in the state. There's a lot to be proud of about being in this district and being in our community, and that is certainly one of them, that we have a community that has figured out how to be responsible with such a precious resource. And by working together, we're getting through it pretty well. And just a reminder, just in case you didn't know, we're not part of the Hetch Hetchy system. Our community is not in any way dependent on the snow melt coming down through the Hetch Hetchy system. We're a self-sufficient one. Our neighbors are very much affected by it. We're not. But all the more reason for us to be aware and continue to conserve and treat water responsibly. So it's here for us when we need it. Any other directors?
I do. I want to thank the community for passing the school board, CSD parcel tax. It was critical for the district to be healthy, and I believe it was just under 70%. So I'm just thrilled to see that parcel tax pass. So.
It's cleared the hurdle by a good little bit.
Good bit.
Yeah. All right. Anything else? General manager's report.
Nothing to report.
Hearing no objection, we are adjourned at 10:12.
So is our thing on the 8th, this is offline, is our thing on the